All right, welcome back. We're going to be talking about Chapter 5, which is in Word 2016, which is about applying formatting and inserting things into a Word document. The first thing I wanted to talk about was columns. And so columns are very useful for breaking up a page vertically so that you've got lines of text or even text and pictures embedded together so that one is on the right side, left side. You can even have 3 or 4 or 5 columns depending on the layout of your page. The way you turn columns on for a part of your entire document is you highlight whatever it is that you want to apply columns to. And once you've highlighted that, then what you need to do is you need to go to the Layout tab on your menu. That will bring up the ribbon which includes Page Setup. And you'll notice under Page Setup, right next to Margins, Orientation, Size, you have columns. If you click the down arrow, you're going to open it up, and I'm going to select 2 columns. And now I have 2 columns on the page. Now I've already set up one thing that's important for you to know, so I'm going to highlight that again, and I'm going to go drop down the column menu, but this time I'm going to select more columns. It's not that I want different columns, I want the options that I'll get when I open this. So now I have the columns dialog box open, and you'll notice that I can set the width of the column, both column 1 and column 2, and I can change the spacing in between the columns. The default is 1/2 of an inch, and that means that column 1 will be 3.5 inches, column 2 is 3.5 inches, that's 7 inches, 7.5 including the spacing in the middle, and I have this page set on narrow margins, so 1/2 inch, and then 7.5, there's my 8.5 inches. If I decrease this, then I'm going to get a much bigger spacing in the center. Unless, and I'm going to go back to where I was, if I unclick the equal column width, now if I increase one, I'm decreasing the other, and you'll notice it's pushing it, and you can see on the preview panel here that it's significantly changing how stuff looks. So I'm going to go, I'll just leave it as a slight, I'll leave it at equal at the moment, we'll come back. So there we go, I've got my equal columns, I've got my 0.3 inches in the middle, columns, more columns, we'll make the first column a little bigger, hit OK, and you see it just changes it. That's all you need to know about columns. It will give you troubles because sometimes it's not going to break in the correct place. It's not going to look correct. It's going to just be giving you a lot of troubles. So one of the things you can do to force the columns to break in the correct places is I can go in here and maybe say, all right, well, right where it starts this every so often, I can go in and put a break that's a column break. And it's going to move everything beyond that to the next column. We've still managed to stay on one page, but you can imagine that could have caused us to roll off to the next page. We have to take that into account as we work with it. I'm going to undo that just because I don't need it to be broken like that. Now, let me show you another trick. So let's take this picture of the cardinal. I'm going to make it small enough to embed in a column. Control X to cut it. Put it right here, the beginning of the paragraph, and Control V. So it's now embedded in my columns, but notice that it treats that picture as one line. And because it's this big, then the text on the line next to it is also going to be result in this large empty space. So I can do a right mouse click on this. I'm going to go down to Wrap Text, and I can change it. Oh, sorry, hit the wrong one. Well, why is it every time I'm on here, something new that it's supposed to do doesn't do it? I'll leave that. I'll have to go look. You should be able to make this so that the text runs in this entire space up here. it's not doing it right at the moment. Today alone, I found 3 different things on this version of Word that should be working that aren't working, and I've got to talk to IT to figure out why it's not working on this particular version. The features there, it's supposed to work, but it's not. All right, let's move on. So let me just do a couple of Control-Z's. Put that back up where it was. Okay, so we're okay. We've got our columns. Now there's another thing that we sometimes need to do, and that's hyphenation. And sometimes what you'll end up with is a word that is being forced. I'll show you one way. I'm going to go back up to columns, turn this into 3 columns. Notice how up here, while, the, and then whether's on the next line. What's happening is that whether cannot be cleanly put on this top line. There's not enough space for it. So if we just, we're going to go to hyphenation. So we're going to be able to tell Word that it's allowed to break words up into syllables or smaller components in order to fix those kinds of problems. And we get to that by going to layout, which is where we already are. And you'll notice hyphenation is right here. And we're going to change the hyphenation to automatic. And well, it did not change whether. Whether's not a good one to try to hyphenate, but I can also go in and manually insert. Well, should be able to. Here's a word right here, hypothermia. So it chose to hyphenate that with hypo on one line. Results, the opossum's case, opportunity. So a number of these got hyphenated. I can always turn it off as well. So remember that cold exposure is hyphenated. Let's see what it was like without the hyphenation. So now I've lost it. Anyway. So you can use hyphenation to determine whether or not something's going to look one way or the other. I still don't like this while the weather, beginning of the first paragraph, because it looks horrible. And so I'm just going to go back to my 2 columns, and that behaves much better. And again, if we want to turn on hyphenation, we just go here and automatically do that. Looks like we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 places where Word decided to hyphenate words that we had in there to try to get everything to fit a little bit better. So that's hyphenation. Again, it's under the layout section in the page setup portion. What about, I'm going to change this just because I'm going to make this. Okay. We've got this has gotten all caps turned on, so we're going to, font, turn off the all caps. Oops. While the weather. So what I've done is I've just removed it, and what we want to do is at the beginning of this paragraph, we're going to do something called drop cap. And what a drop cap is at the beginning of a paragraph, beginning of a page, chapter, section, whatever it is that you want, I want that letter to be large, and I either want it embedded in my paragraph or outside the paragraph. It's not as common, but it's available. So we're going to go back to Insert, and over under the text section, there is a drop cap section. So we're going to do that. I can choose none, dropped, and you'll notice if you look at the page now that the W has been made really large. It's 3 lines tall and a proportionate size wide. I can also put it off in the margin, which doesn't look good here, but it might in another circumstance. Certainly if the margin was larger on this page. So I'm just going to leave it as dropped. And that is a what they call a drop cap. inserts. So let's talk about inserting different things. I'm just going to put it in here. It was 15 degrees below 0. Well, how do we do the degree sign without actually spelling out the word degrees? It is a symbol that's available, and if we stay in the Insert menu, we go all the way over to Symbols, and you'll notice that there's some that are commonly used or that you've used recently. I'm going to go to More Symbols, and it's going to pop up this dialog box. And you're going to need to go through here and find that. And it should be right here someplace. This is not it. This is a white bullet, but we want the do. There it is. So there's the degree sign. You'll notice down here it says degree sign. And I'm going to insert it. And now I'm going to close this. Now I'm going to delete the word degrees. So now I have the exact same thing. It was 15 degrees below 0. You might want to specify Fahrenheit or centigrade, depending on where you live. That is one way to put in the symbol. If you do a lot of the same symbol, you can always just do a copy and paste. So I'm going to go to the end of this column. It was 10 degrees. I did a copy paste. Above 0 the next day. So that's one way to insert a symbol. If we wanted to insert, I'm just going to go find a new page. A couple of the common ones are things like the copyright symbol. Now again, I can go in and go to Insert Symbol and find the copyright. There it is. It's one of the most common ones. There's also the registered mark. It's really hard to see. I'd have to zoom in. View, zoom. There you go. Now, hopefully you can see that that's an R. You can get there by doing an open parentheses, C, close parentheses, boom, and it just did it automatically. Same thing for the R. It only works for a few of them, but those are so common that they've got literally the shortcuts. If you need to actually put C and not have it be, once it's done that, do a Control Z and it'll put it back, and then you can go on and do what you want. The reason I know this is because I used to run a 501c, Control Z, 3 corporation. And so it would be something you'd have to write out without the copyright symbol, and you get used to doing that. So those are special symbols and characters that you can insert. We go back to a normal view. So we're not quite so large. How about if we insert, back to the insert, you can insert an equation. They've got a bunch of the standard equations in there, more equations from office.com, or insert a new one, in which case you're going to have to go through and write the equation. That's about it for that. Special characters. So we were looking under symbols, but we're going to look under special characters. This is where you've got some of the standard ones, but it's not as worrisome for your average user. Again, the copyright and the registered. How about the trademark, the section mark, like you'll see in a lot of legal documents? If you want the paragraph symbol, so you can get those here as well. And if you need them, again, it's instead of symbols, just flip over to the tab that says special characters. Okay. How about if we want to put in the date and the time? I'm going to go up to the header, double click on the header again. do a tab over to the right side, and I'm going to go to Insert, and then under Text, you see a date and time. If I click on this, it's going to pop up with what style of date and time do I want? Well, maybe I want the date. I want it Sunday, January 27th, 2019. Do I want it to include the time or not include the time? Or do I just want the time? I'm just going to go with the date. And so when I hit OK, and also notice I can set it to automatically update. So every time this file is opened, it's going to update the date for today, whatever day you happen to be in. I'm going to leave that unchecked because I want this document to reflect when I worked on it and saved it, and not just automatically open up with a new date. Because otherwise, sometimes it's also hard to know when you last worked on it. So, okay. So we now have a Sunday, January 29th, 2019 up at the top of the page. Double click to get out of there. Triple click, quadruple click. There we go, we're out. So we're going to go down to the bottom of the page here now, and we're going to look about inserting images, text boxes, shapes, and word art. And we get there, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but from the Insert menu on Word. So if we go up to Insert, and we notice that we have the option to do pictures, shapes, smart art, charts, screenshots, and over under the text section, word art. I'm going to start, oh, and a text box. Let's start with text boxes. If I click this, you'll notice I get a bunch of options for text boxes. Just going to pick plain old simple text box. What it does is it drops a box with text in it. This particular case, it's just text telling you to put your text here. I can resize this any way I want to. And I can go back to home and I can change what size the font is in this. Yeah, let me put some text in there. Hello world. Increase the font, center it. I can play with it like that. I can change the color of the text. I can bold it. All the things you can do outside of it. But there's a couple of things you can do inside of a text box. One is at the top, you'll notice it has the ability to rotate it around. It was doing some funky movings around because it can't go outside where you imagine the top of the page to be. So we're already on we've got a margin that we have to stay within. So it's got to stay inside that. You'll notice it will click at the ordinal positions, 90 degrees, horizontal and vertical. That helps you make sure it lines up. So you can do that. I can also change it so that it is behind text, in front of text. I've got text going right through it. I've got it tight, meaning that it's going to pack text all around it. So let's take this up. I'm going to just grab it, bring it up here and drop it right in the middle of here. Now, if I put it in front of text, see, it's got the text behind it. Of course, I'm blocking it. If I put it behind text, it's behind it. Just be careful. If you put it behind something, it's really hard to click on it because the objects in front of it are the ones you're going to be clicking on with your mouse. I can change it so that everything is wrapped around it. I can put it, square and tight. In this case, it doesn't make a lot of difference, and through doesn't make a lot of difference. So those three are, in this particular circumstance, all appear fairly close. But it's top and bottom that's obviously different, and then in front and behind. So let's just, I'm going to grab it, bring it back down out of there. And that's true whether or not it's a text box, shape, a word art, or an image. So you can do all of those same, how do I want the text and the rest of the document to wrap around it? All of those are available. Just highlight it. You get this little menu layout options, clicking right off of it, open that up, and it'll help you through that. So that's a text box. Well, how about if we want to insert a word art? So we're going to go back to insert. Word art is over under the text section. And I'm going to click that and pick one of these. What format do I want this to be? And since it's word art, you're basically coming up with a way to input words on your page that are more graphical in their nature, and they can be moved around the way you would the text box. So I'm just going to pick this, get some nice shadows there, type in hello world, and move it so it's out from behind the other one. And you'll notice I can grab this, bring it back up here. The difference here is that the word art doesn't have a background naturally. I can add a background to it, but it comes transparent. Whereas the word box, the default was to have a solid white background rather than transparent. I can remove the background colors. I could go up while the text box or the other one are highlighted, go up to shape fill and say no fill. And now if I bring it up here, you'll notice there's no fill in that box anymore. So you have a lot of options that you can do with this. I can also remove the shape outline. So no outline. Notice I have to click on it to find where the outline is, then click on the outline so I can drag it. And now if I leave it there, it's just buried in that. Don't want to do that, so I'm going to bring it back down here. So both of these give me some flexibility on putting in little bits and pieces. Again, I also have the ability to make these non-horizontal assemblies of words. How about if we want to put a shape in? So I'm going to go again, insert. Under illustrations, we've got shapes. And I can pick whatever shape I want. I could stars, ovals. You can do arrows, but you can't add text to arrows. So I'm going to pick a shape that I can add text to. I'm going to do an oval or circle. But, sorry. You'll notice I get I had a cross for the mouse pointer, and that allowed me to drag to the size of the object I wanted. While this is highlighted, I can actually type in hello world and add text to it. The default is always to just insert it at your standard 11 point font, which if you look at this, that's just not large enough. So I'm going to increase it until it fills this much better. Oop, too much. There we go. So now I have three things that all say hello world. Because this is an insertable object, you'll notice again, I can change the orientation here, and I can also change how it fits in with the rest of the text. Right now it's set to be in front of the text, but I can also set it to be surrounded by the text so that it does that. So I have all of these options that I can do. No, I don't. They dropped down a whole page there. The last one that I wanted to do, I'm going to move these off of this page, is we're going to insert and work with an image. Get down to page 5 in this case, and I'm going to insert an image. I can grab pictures from two different places. I can grab them from any file I have on my computer, but I can also go online and grab a picture from there. And I'm just going to do that this time. Online pictures. It's Microsoft. It's going to open up Bing for the search engine. And I'm going to type in Butte, which is this type of a structure. You'll find it in Western United States. And I'm going to pick one of these. Doesn't matter which one. I'll pick this one. Well, maybe find one with a little higher resolution. There we go. That's got a higher resolution. And I'm going to insert it. So there's an image. I've put it in here. I can, by clicking on this, I can crop it. You'll notice, again, I did that by clicking the object, doing a right mouse click, And crop is one of the things that pops up. So if I want to crop it, I get these black lines and black corners, and I can change the size of this that I want that image to be. Okay, not even sure how I got two pictures on here. There we go. I'm going to put this other one on a different page. Hold on a second. There we go. So here we go. We've got this picture, and I want to use this for whatever. I'm actually going to go backwards and revert the crop, put it back up to its original size. You notice how even though I told it to crop, the image was still there. It's taking account of where I put things so that I can show it. I can tell it how I want it to interact in terms of wrapping it. I can, if you'll notice, if I have an object like this selected, I now have a different option on the menu at the top. I have Picture Tools Format. So I'm going to click that, and now I've got a bunch of options for working with this particular object, which was a picture. And I can do picture borders. So I could choose to put a border around this. I could get out of it. I could do picture effects, so I can add, some kind of a shadow, buttons, rotations, do whatever. And I've got a lot of things to pick from. I'm going to leave it plain for now. I could change shadows, just putting shadows behind it like it's not actually on the edge. I can put inner shadows, so it's like it's inside a picture frame. And I can change the perspective a little bit. You'll notice it just adds a shadow to kind of give it some perspective. You do reflections, where it adds a reflection underneath it. I can add glow around it. I can soften the edges, go all the way up to quite a bit of softness. Those are kind of, gives it a nice effect. I can put bevels in around the edges. And we can do three-dimensional rotations. So you can play with those and figure out what looks good to you. I'm going to just go with back to the regular picture. Now, one of the things that the chapter 4 asks you to do is to work with an object like this and remove the background. So you'll notice up at the top of this Picture Tools Format, there is a remove background option. Everything that turns purple on that picture is the part of the object that is going to be turned into white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand it till it's right back out to the edges here. All right. I have no idea why this is doing this. There we go. Okay. I now have that image such that the entire sky has been turned purple, which means that it's going to delete that and only show that as a white background. Everything in the foreground is going to stay as dirt, rocks, and plants. We try bringing this up a little bit, but you'll notice you really have to play with it a little bit because you don't want it to fall apart on you. And I think the best option we're seeing is just like that. Now, if I go outside of the box and click, there it is. I now have the butte showing with no sky. I'm going to put a border on this because without it, it's hard to know where it starts and the rest of the page ends. One other thing that it asks, so we're going to insert, I forget what state they were working with, but we're going to insert an outline of the state of, we'll do Utah. Insert online picture, map of Utah. And just trying to find them. Tell you what. State of Utah outline. Don't you hate it when you know what you want and it's hard to find? So why is Idaho under State of Utah outline? I have no idea. And that looks like Arizona. Let's just play Utah. All right. I hope that's Utah. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink this down quite a bit. I'm also going to crop this because you see there's a lot of white space around the image. So crop. I'm going to bring it right into here, into there. So we're going to lose the whole side. Okay, so there. I've got that. I'm going to make it even smaller. Now, in order to get this on top of that, I've got to change this to in front of text. Oh, sorry, I was on the wrong page anyway. And now I can move it wherever I need it to be. So there we go. So I've done those two parts, but it also wants me to put a section of text at the top. So I'm going to insert a text box, simple text box. This year's meeting of the Jello Lovers Society will be at Butte Bluff on November 15th, 2019. You notice also we have we still have the hyphenation on, and so it's hyphenating that November. We might not want that. I'm going to go to home. I'm going to just center it, make it a little bigger, and I'm going to get rid of the text bar, again, drawing tools, format. I don't want any outline. Now there's a difference between a white outline and no outline. I want a no outline and I want no fill. So now if I move this, oops. I need to take this and make it in front. There we go. So I now have this box on top of this picture and this picture on top of that picture all together as one. So that's one of the assignments. You're going to have to manipulate it around like that. It's a little more complex, but those are the ideas. Remember, come up to your picture tools. So if I've got the picture tool, click on the format here and start playing with the options. One last thing, I'm going to get rid of this one. Need a clean page. I think that's the last page, yep. And I want to show you how to do a screenshot. So we're going to go into Insert. And notice right here on illustrations, one of the options is a screenshot. If I click this, it's going to say, well, here are the two active other windows that I can pick from. I've got a PowerPoint presentation open, and I have the control panel for the Zoom conference that's running right now. If I click this, boom, it takes a picture of that and drops it in. And I can now treat it as a picture, and I can make it as large or as small as I want it to be. And I can insert that into my document. I can also go into Insert, Screenshot, do Screen Clipping. And if I do Screen Clipping, what it means is that I'm going to be able to use a tool that I highlighted, literally start here, highlight it down to the bottom of that. You notice I've even got a picture of me stuck in there. I'm not sure how well that came out because, of course, the whole screen changes around when that happens. So that's screen captures, screenshots. You can also do, if you've never done it before, a control print screen. and that copies everything on your screen, and you can drop it into your document and then crop it however you need it to come up with something that you want. I think that's pretty much it for chapter 5. Hopefully you'll be able to get through that and get your homework done as well, and we will see you next week. Thanks.